On June 5th, 1944, the night before the D-Day invasion, a small unit of American paratroopers prepares for a dangerous mission in occupied France. Their goal is to take down a Nazi radio transmitter mounted on a church tower in a rural village. If the tower is destroyed, the US Air Force will be able to support Allied troops storming the beaches the next day. Among the squad is Private Boyce, a new recruit with only 3 months of service. As their plane approaches the drop zone, German anti-aircraft fire tears through the skies. Explosions erupt around them, killing several men on board. The plane takes more hits, forcing the paratroopers to jump when the red light flicks on. Many are killed during the jump, but Boyce survives by landing in a river. Struggling to regroup, he soon finds Corporal Ford, his stern and battle-hardened superior. Together, they encounter 3 more survivors: Tibet, Chase, and Dawson. Ford, being the highest-ranking soldier, assumes command and orders them forward. The group pushes toward the village, but tragedy strikes when Dawson accidentally steps on a landmine and is killed instantly. While moving through the forest, they spot a young French woman named Chloe. Startled by the sight of armed strangers, she flees, but Ford insists they chase her, unwilling to risk exposure. The soldiers catch her, and when she pulls a knife to defend herself, Ford disarms her with ease. Boyce, who speaks French, assures her they mean no harm and only want her guidance to the village. Reluctantly, Chloe agrees and takes them to her home, where she lives with her younger brother Paul and her bedridden aunt. Boyce waits outside with Chloe, while the others search the house. Fearing they might harm her family, Chloe rushes inside, making noise that alerts the neighbors. One of the elderly women informs Nazi soldiers, claiming Chloe was outside past curfew. Soon, German soldiers arrive and begin harassing her until Captain Waffner, a ranking officer with an interest in Chloe, intervenes. He scolds his men and orders them to leave her alone. Once the danger passes, Boyce and Chloe rejoin the others inside. Strange noises come from behind a door, which Chloe explains is her sick aunt. But when Boyce checks, he finds a grotesquely disfigured woman, barely recognizable. Chloe explains that the Nazis have been taking villagers to the church, where a doctor performs terrifying experiments on them. Chloe herself despises the Germans for murdering her parents during the experiment. Not long after, Waffner returns and knocks at the door. Paul, Boyce, and Ford hide in the attic while Chloe reluctantly lets him inside. Waffner makes advances toward her, pressuring her into their arrangement. She must give herself to him in exchange for her family's safety. This time, Chloe resists, but he threatens to take her little brother to the church like her aunt. Cornered, she reluctantly agrees. Furious at what he sees from above, Boyce wants to intervene, but Ford warns that acting recklessly could ruin their mission. Unable to tolerate it any longer, Boyce storms downstairs and points his weapon at Waffner. Ford joins in, and together they beat him badly and tie him up in the attic for interrogation. With Waffner restrained, Ford sends Boyce to scout the church. When Boyce reaches the site, he is horrified to see German soldiers burning disfigured villagers alive with flamethrowers. Before he can react, a German shepherd attacks, giving away his position. He spots a passing truck and immediately jumps inside, only to discover it filled with corpses. The truck carries him straight inside the heavily guarded church. Upon reaching, Boyce explores the underground facility and discovers prison cells, where through one small opening, he sees a monstrous figure inside. Deeper inside, he stumbles upon a sinister laboratory where victims are trapped in bags. Among the equipment, Boyce spots a vial filled with a strange red serum and keeps it for himself. He then makes his way deeper into the underground lab when he hears a faint cry for help. He pushes on and soon finds his fellow soldier Rosenfeld strapped to a table. Fortunately, Rosenfeld hasn't been experimented on yet. Boyce rushes to free him, but before he can, Dr. Schmidt enters the room, forcing Boyce to hide. From his hiding spot, Boyce watches as the doctor injects a corpse with a syringe filled with the red serum. To his shock, the dead man twitches, convulses, and then returns to life. The reanimated soldier is locked away in a morgue cell, while Schmidt calmly leaves the room, as though nothing unusual had happened. Seizing the opportunity, Boyce rushes back to Rosenfeld, who is hooked up to a strange device, and freeing him takes every ounce of Boyce's strength. Rosenfeld cries out in agony as the machine is ripped away, but the 2 soldiers don't waste time. They know they must escape before anyone returns. Spotting a sewer grate, they pry it open and finally manage to flee the nightmare. Back at Chloe's house, Boyce bursts in with Rosenfeld and describes everything he witnessed in the church. The others dismiss it as nonsense, and Ford is furious that Boyce neglected to scout the radio tower. To prove his story, Boyce pulls out the syringe of red liquid. Ford turns his attention to Waffner and demands answers. Waffner smugly declares that the villagers' bodies are being used to create something greater. Enraged, Chloe stabs him in revenge for her parents and her aunt. The soldiers restrain her and send her downstairs, while Ford takes over. He brutally tortures Waffner, determined to get information. After enduring repeated beatings, Waffner finally reveals that 40 German soldiers are stationed at the tower. With this intelligence, Ford prepares his squad for battle and orders Chase to ready Waffner for transport. They plan to use him as bait in their attack. However, when Chase goes to the attic, he finds Waffner motionless. Believing him dead, Chase lets his guard down, only for Waffner to spring to life and knock him aside. The others rush in, subdue the Nazi officer, but Chase has already been fatally wounded. Desperate to save him, Boyce takes out the stolen syringe and injects it into Chase. Miraculously, Chase jolts back to life, shocking everyone. At first he insists he feels fine, only complaining of thirst, but soon his body heats up and his bones begin to snap and contort. In horror, the squad watches as Chase mutates into a grotesque, zombie-like creature. Panicked, the soldiers demand answers. Smirking through his bloodied face, the officer declares that the serum resurrects the dead as monstrous super soldiers. Moments later, Chase loses control and turns violent. He lunges at Boyce, screaming and demanding to know what was done to him. The others try to restrain him, but he lashes out with inhuman strength. Ford empties his gun into him, but the bullets barely slow him down. Finally, Boyce smashes Chase repeatedly with his rifle until the creature collapses. The chaos allows Waffner to escape. On his way out, he grabs young Paul as a hostage. By the time the soldiers realize, Waffner has already alerted nearby Nazis, and a fierce firefight breaks out. Though the Americans manage to kill many Germans, Waffner survives and escapes with Paul. Chloe pleads with the squad to rescue her brother, but Ford insists they must stay focused on the mission. Boyce argues otherwise. Paul's life is at risk because of them, and they cannot abandon him. He then proposes to destroy the entire church, which will eliminate both the radio tower and the laboratory. Tibbet sides with Boyce, and even Ford reluctantly agrees to the plan. Meanwhile, Waffner staggers into the lab in unbearable pain, half his face destroyed. He demands Schmidt to inject him with the serum. The doctor warns him that the formula has never been tested on the living, but Waffner doesn't care and plunges the needle into himself. His body convulses violently, twisting and mutating as he lets out a monstrous roar, transforming into a grotesque creature. Meanwhile, Chloe finds herself pursued by a Nazi soldier who corners her in a secluded area and tries to assault her. But before he can react, Ford appears from the shadows and knocks him unconscious. Not long after, that same soldier arrives at the church in his vehicle, but this time his mouth is sealed with duct tape. The other Nazis gather around, puzzled by his strange state. Desperate to warn them, he mumbles frantically through the tape, but when they rip it off, a grenade hidden in his mouth detonates, triggering a massive blast that kills dozens of Germans instantly. As reinforcements rush in to secure the area, Rosenfeld and Tibbet spring into action and wipe out most of the soldiers. Taking advantage of the chaos, Chloe, Boyce, and Ford slip underground through the sewer system and infiltrate the compound. Once inside, Chloe separates from the others to look for her little brother. She corners a terrified Nazi soldier at gunpoint, demanding that he lead her to her brother. The man reluctantly complies and guides her into a chamber, only for Chloe to realize that the room is full of half-dead test subjects. Before she can react, the soldier aims his gun at her, but Boyce intervenes at the last second and kills him. Together, they press on until they finally discover Paul strapped to a bed in the laboratory. Boyce orders Chloe and her brother to escape through the sewer while he stays behind to finish what he started. As Chloe and Paul flee, they're suddenly confronted by a monstrous zombie. Chloe urges her brother to run while she stands her ground. She fires 3 shots, but it refuses to go down and charges her. Fortunately, she stumbles upon a flamethrower and uses it to incinerate the creature. She then reunites with Boyce and Rosenfeld, joining the firefight against the remaining Nazis. At the same time, Ford reaches the radio tower, where he successfully plants a bomb with a timer. But as he turns to leave, he comes face to face with Waffner, who has now transformed into a superhuman monster. The mutated Nazi destroys the bomb and savagely beats Ford. Elsewhere, Boyce encounters Dr. Schmidt, who attempts to shoot him, but Boyce dodges and the two engage in a vicious struggle. He eventually manages to stab the doctor with his own scalpel and kills him. Meanwhile, Waffner drags Ford back to the lab, stringing him on a hook and tormenting him in revenge. Boyce storms in and unloads his weapon on the mutated Waffner, but the bullets barely faze him. During the chaos, Ford manages to free himself and injects himself with the serum. As Waffner prepares to finish off Boyce, Ford intervenes and the two monsters clash in a savage fight. Knowing he can't overpower Waffner, he rolls an oxygen tank near the creature. Boyce spots the setup and shoots the tank, triggering a massive explosion that hurls Waffner aside. With the opening created, the soldiers prepare to retreat, but Ford suddenly shoves Boyce aside, seals himself inside the lab and refuses to leave. Boyce pleads for him to escape, but Ford insists he must stay behind to ensure the lab and the serum are destroyed, declaring that such a weapon should never fall into anyone's hands, not even the Allies. With a heavy heart, Boyce accepts Ford's sacrifice and leaves. Inside, the corpses of fallen soldiers, including Waffner, begin to rise again. Ford, now resigned to his fate, sets off the explosives, obliterating the lab, Waffner, and all the reanimated creatures along with himself. At the same time, Boyce reaches the tower, detonates the bomb, and watches as the entire church collapses into ruins. Soon after, a radio broadcast announces the success of the D-Day invasion, confirming a decisive Allied victory. In the final scene, Boyce reports to his commanding officer, crediting Ford for the daring plan that destroyed the church. The sergeant asks Boyce about rumors of a hidden lab beneath the site, but Boyce denies it, claiming he saw nothing but the radio station.